Hi, guys, and welcome. This is Jen Gata Siciliano, artist, memoir writer, bipolar psychiatric survivor, and your host of Not As Crazy As You Think podcast, the place that offers an alternative perspective on mental illness, highlighting creativity, non-conventional healing, and breaking on through to the other side. If you are ready for a new narrative on the mental realm that celebrates crazy and cool without penalty, then Not As Crazy As You Think is for you. Hello, this is Jen Gata Siciliano, your host of Not As Crazy As You Think podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. And with us today is certified health coach, fitness expert, and author David Greenwalt. A husband, father, former police officer, gym owner, competitive state-level bodybuilder, and powerlifter. In 1997, at age 32 and a body weight of 235 pounds, David discovered an evidence-based approach for getting off his own 50 excess pounds and keeping it off for 25 years and counting. Since 1999, through his company Leanness Lifestyle University, David has been helping student members from every walk of life lose excess fat, keep the muscle, and manage this crazy life. David, thank you so much for joining the show. I'm so happy to have you on board. I really believe in your message, and it's great to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Well, over the years, through your Leanness Lifestyle University, you've helped so many people regain control of their health and their lives. And when helping your students eliminate relapses in obesity, you focus on nutrition, activity, but also emotional fitness. Now, this is really interesting to me because I know that, emotional fitness, just in general, the term really turns me on because of my interest in mental health. How is this one of the main things that we need to be aware of to gain control of our lives again?
Such a good and important question. Both really is. When I started working with people online, I owned a gym back in 1987. I was a police officer then. I owned a gym. And that's when I really first started working with people. People would come into the gym. I want to get in better shape. I want to lose fat. I want to tone up, whatever the mission was. But when I really started working with people in 1997, 1998, online, I had a different company. And through that company, I had a large number of customers. And then the internet came in. Mm-hmm. And then I started getting people asking me things like, "Hey, Dave, real quick, don't want to be a bother." This was by email, by the way, which was new and amazing. Gosh, we have email,
Right.
Jen. And so going way back, and people would say, "Hey, don't want to be a bother, Dave, but if you could just help me real quick, get 30 pounds off and keep it off forever,
Mm-hmm.
no big deal. Just answer it in a quick email, a couple of paragraphs ought to take care of it and we'll be on our way." Well, I gave it the old college try, but I realized quickly that I was doing them a disservice, even with my extensive and lengthy background myself in bodybuilding and powerlifting and fitness and being interested in fitness since I was a little boy and all of these things. Even though I had researched and wrote about it and all of this, I was like, this back of the napkin fortune cookie answer, for such a complex problem isn't doing people justice. So in looking at all of it and working with people and kind of seeing what was really going on, I ended up writing a 500-page book. And a big part of in doing that, and the reason it was so long, is because I addressed not only the nutritional aspects, not only the activity, exercise aspects, but this huge area that you're referring to here, emotional fitness, is kind of how I characterize it. And so I want to at least get that background because it was critical then, and it's as critical or even more so now in 2023 that we look at these things. But I saw even back then that if the nutrition and activity bus goes off in the ditch, it's most often not going to be because people forgot how to eat and how to move. Mm-hmm. Once they are taught how and what to eat and what's going to work for them on some kind of movement on a daily basis or spread out over the week or whatever it may be, whatever's right for them. Once they're taught that, and they're really taught, let's just say the good evidence-based stuff.
Right.
They're taught that. if that stuff doesn't hold true and consistent, helping them move in a direction to satisfy their goals, it's not because they all of a sudden got amnesia. It's not often anyway. It's not often because of that. It's going to be because emotional fitness wasn't strong enough. Emotional fitness had a breakdown. Emotional fitness made it so that, as Dr. Viktor Frankl says in Man's Search for Meaning, between the stimulus and the response is a space. And in that space between the stimulus and the response is our ability to choose the response. And in that choice lies our growth and freedom. So if it goes haywire, if the nutrition and exercise are no longer supporting the goals of improved fitness, weight management, whatever it may be, so often it's emotional fitness that had a breakdown. So often something just felt overwhelming. So often there's been a pattern of behavior where the emotional fitness wasn't able to hold the nutrition and exercise components. So if the nutrition and we'll say activity exercise bus goes off in a ditch, it's not often going to be because someone forgot. It's not often going to be because someone no longer remembers what good nutrition and exercise is if they've been taught, let's say, an evidence-based structure, a really good solid foundation. Nothing's exactly the same for everyone, but if the foundation is strong and evidence-based and sound and solid, it doesn't go off in the ditch because they no longer remember. They didn't know what to do. It's going to be because emotional fitness wasn't strong enough. Something wasn't quite where it needs to be on the emotional fitness front, because I saw very early on that having that stronger emotional fitness foundation is what's going to keep the nutrition and exercise principles, foundation, a framework going in the direction that supports whatever the goals the person has. So I knew emotional fitness was a huge, huge part of long-term success. And honestly, that's all I've been interested in since day one. I've never been interested in let's just get it off and whatever happens after the first 4 to 6 weeks, it is what it is.
Right.
I've always kind of taken the mindset, especially after working with people, unless you are trying to make weight for a weight class, like you're a wrestler or you're a physique competitor or you're something that involves a weight class, no one wants to lose the excess and regain it.
Right.
It's all about permanence, and that's not common in my field to have such an intense focus. But early on, that was my focus. I wanted people to be successful long-term. And for that to happen, I knew that we had to have a strong basis in teaching and shoring up emotional fitness, which honestly, in 1999, when I wrote my book, I don't know of another book then that addressed nutrition, exercise, and emotional fitness all in one.
Right. I mean, this is something I think that's becoming more popular in terms of, things that people are focusing on because they realize that these are influencers, of where their issues lie. When you speak of emotional fitness, let's get to the heart of it. What exactly does that mean to you? Because, we all may see it differently. It feels like a catch-all phrase, but I know that you have a very specific, approach to it.
Yeah, and it's true. I do recognize too that it is muddier than like the definition of, nutrition or what's a carbohydrate or what's, it just is, because we humans are complex. We just are. We're complex creatures, where we have such diversity in how everything affects us and how we process and how we interpret, and then the meaning we give to things and all of that. But to try to keep it as simple as possible, emotional fitness deals, in my view, primarily with self-awareness, good self-awareness, feeling authentically good more often, and self-regulation. And then also our interpersonal connections with others is in there too. So self-awareness, feeling and I use the word authentically good on purpose, but self-awareness, feeling authentically good, and self-regulation with interpersonal connection, obviously a huge component there. And I say feeling authentically good more often because we can do things in our lives that leave us feeling regretfully good. It felt good in the moment. I had 1,000 calories of whatever. It felt good in the moment, but then, I feel what I feel after. Retail therapy. We go out, we spend $500 on the credit card, and then we get the bill and we're like, oh, I didn't have the money. Now I feel bad about it. Gambling, porn. I mean, it just goes on and on. There's all kinds of things that might be quote unquote good in the moment, but we regret it later. Authentically good is where we have no regrets. We feel truly in sync with our core values, our virtues and who we are at our best selves. And we feel more authentically good more often. And so, to kind of tie it together, to me, emotional fitness will help us to enhance our ability to overcome challenges, to manage life. And it is, this crazy life that's always got stuff coming at us. No matter, every day there's going to be stuff. And it seems like, I've been on this earth for 58 years now, but it does seem like in 2023, there's no shortage of the stuff that it kind of keeps coming at us.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if it's really more than 1983 or 1993, but even at 58, it kind of feels at times like there is, the ability with social media being what it is, the speed with which things are coming. But anyway, all right, back to emotional fitness. Our ability to overcome challenges, our ability to manage life is greatly about our level or strength, I should say, of emotional fitness. Our ability to make good decisions in the face of adversity, in the face when we're stressed. And in my world, being a health coach primarily focused on people looking to get in better shape, usually through fat loss, going from someplace typically heavier and less healthy, typically, to someplace lighter and healthier, whatever that may be for them. Being able to make good decisions on that nutrition front, especially, but making good decisions in the moment. In the moment of what? In the moment of stress, in the moment of anxiety, in the moment of, normally I feel overwhelmed. I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle this. So my kind of conditioned automated response, has become eat, drink.
Yeah.
So being able to make a better decision in those moments. And then emotional fitness also has to do with just maintaining a more positive outlook on life. I don't know anyone I'd be suspicious of the person who says they're always positive.
Right.
I'd be suspicious of the person who says, I'm always grateful. Right. But being more positive, being more grateful, and having an ability to do that in light of everything that we're facing in this crazy world we're living in is a strength that is more likely to happen, is more likely to give us all the benefits that I've described when emotional fitness is stronger. And the cool thing is, and I'll pause here, is emotional fitness is not a trait like eye color. And that's the thing that's really hopeful to me. It's something that can be strengthened. It can be trained. It can be practiced. It can become a skill like so many others, and we can get good at it, even if we didn't have any of it in our upbringing, even if it's not something we know much about. It really is something that we can grow stronger.
And I just love that message, because that's one of the main things that I believe in terms of, maintaining mental health, because a lot of people believe, like, if they have a very distressful situation in their lives where a mental illness or mental state of mental distress takes over, they see every other area of their lives fall down as well. And I always say, this is something that you can figure it out. It's within each of us. And so many people struggle with, the nutritional issues and just health decline as well, that if they really can believe that this is another component, that if they get in check and they figure out ways to work with this and to develop, it empowers people. I think that's like the main thing that you seem to really want to do, is empower others through these ways of thinking. I mean, I think it's huge. I love the components of self-awareness and self-regulation. How often do you come across this in clients that, is it very common? I know it's common for me, like being able to be self-regulating is difficult. How often do you see that these are big blocks in a person's progress?
99.9% of the time.
Wow.
I mean, like seriously, without exaggerating, it's incredibly high. And then I look at what can be the contributing factors. I come at everything I do now, not only from this three-legged stool of nutrition, activity, and emotional fitness, but I've got three others. I kind of come at it from a six-pillar approach where we're looking at what drives willpower and discipline, because that has to do with self-regulation. And then we have to look at, in our modern obesogenic environment, we have to look at the aspect of triggers and addiction, often ultra-processed food addiction. And that's something a lot of people aren't even aware of. And so it's huge. It's so incredibly prevalent and it's almost never discussed, not in the normal circles of kind of health and wellness and, let's say diet and exercise, eat less, exercise more, all that kind of basic, oversimplified, almost offensive to me thinking, not from the end users who don't really, I wouldn't expect to know the difference, but from people that are in my field kind of teaching and preaching the eat less, exercise more. It's just calories in, calories out. It's not. It's many components. In my view, in my 30 years of doing this, 24 years since 1999, as you and I are talking, there are six pillars that we have to look at. And we have to look at if self-regulation in this area, okay, isn't good, why? Why isn't it good? It could be because they haven't been taught the basics of nutrition from an evidence-based perspective. That's probably the least of it, but there could be that. And then emotional fitness, huge. It could be this issue that I call why power drives willpower. So what's going on? People have minimized the fact that they aren't even aware that having an incredibly strong why in this obesogenic environment is crucial for success. People are unaware, Jen, that a lot of people will wonder, because you're talking about self-regulation. A lot of people will wonder, why don't I have the discipline for this? Right? Where's my willpower? I'm lacking willpower. And I look at kind of willpower and discipline as one and the same. I look at motivation different. Motivation I look at as more fleeting, more kind of day to day. I'm in the mood today. I'm motivated today. I feel motivated. I saw this. I'm motivated. But discipline and willpower are more of that underbelly, the stuff that just is like, I'm in this, I do this. My working definition of willpower is doing what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, whether you feel like it or not. And in the areas where we are doing things that are kind of difficult and long-term, and maybe not things that come supernatural to us, or maybe not in areas where we just love it. Like, if you have something that you're just super passionate about and you love, no one needs to remind you to do it.
Right.
You just do it. No one has to tell me. I don't need any coaxing. I don't need an accountability partner. I just love, whatever it may be. But, even going to work each day, if you work for someone else, you don't go to work each day because you're in a great mood and you can't wait to go in and you can't wait to, sometimes that's the case, but a lot of times it's not, but you do it anyway.
Right.
And the reason you go to work and you go to work on time is because you have a why that's so strong for going to work. It's because of the money. Partly because of the money, but partly because you get satisfaction, or maybe you feel like there's a fulfillment aspect, or maybe you feel like you're contributing value, or maybe, and on and on and on. Others are relying on you. You've got all of these things that come into the complexity of why you're willing to go to work sick. You're willing to go to work tired. You're willing to go to work after you just cried your eyes out for 30 minutes. You're still going to go to work, and you're going to go to work on time.
Right.
If you've got kids, you pick them up from school on time and you do the things, the soccer practice, and you do all that stuff, not because you want to do it all the time. You do it because you're why. Right. For making sure that relationship you have with your kids, and your kids know they can count on you, and you can imagine letting them, that why is so strong. You will do what needs to be done when it needs to be done, whether you feel like it or not. And this ties into self-regulation. If the why is strong enough, we'll find a way. And if not, we find an excuse. And the thing that's nice about this is it is universal. If you've got an advanced degree, you didn't hang in there and put in those crazy hours and all the studying and all the classwork and all the stuff you had to do to get the advanced degree because you just loved the process necessarily.
Right.
You wanted the end result. The why was so strong for the perceived end result that you did what needed to be done when it needed to be done, whether you felt like it or not. So I know I'm kind of going into this big thing on why power, but it's so huge in how it contributes to self-regulation.
Right. And do you find that most people don't even have a why, or that their why is off base?
Both. And most people know what they don't want.
Right.
We focus, a part of emotional fitness is focus on what you want, not on what you fear or don't want. If you ask someone, hey, what is it that you want, fitness-wise, health-wise, weight-wise, whatever that may be, most times their answer will be what they don't want. They flip it to, well, I can tell you this. I don't want to be living this anymore.
Right.
You just told me what you don't want. And that's very normal and natural to have that as a focus. Unfortunately, the subconscious a lot of times doesn't hear the not, and the subconscious carries out about 90% of everything we do in a day. 10% is conscious, frontal lobe, executive function up here in the front of our brain. It's about 10% of what we do. And it has to be that way. Otherwise, we would just melt down from needing too much energy to think about, how do I brush my teeth?
Right.
And so the subconscious does that. Subconscious will drive us to work. The subconscious will get us on the bus. The subconscious will, do what it needs to do when we've done it 1,000 times. And thank goodness for that. The subconscious wants to carry out the orders of what it believes is the most authentic version of us. And so it's really important that we are developing a focus on what we want, because the subconscious doesn't hear as well. It doesn't omit, I should say, the word not and don't and no. It just kind of says, I don't want to be living this lifestyle anymore. It doesn't really hear the no or not as much. And so it's, I want to be living this lifestyle. And so we really want to just reframe it in the form of a positive. And so a good way to do that, if someone's listening and says, well, my natural tendency would be to say, I don't want my knees to hurt anymore or whatever. I would say, what's the opposite of that? We think of as a tip, as strategy to kind of reframe it to a true positive. What's the opposite of, I don't want my knees to hurt anymore? I want my knees to feel great. I want my knees to be pain-free. I want my knees to move fluidly. I want to have full range of motion. All right. Now we're moving more so in that positive focus on what you want, not on what you fear or don't want. So all of these things can take time. And all of these things are ideally anyway, individualized for the person. Not every person needs every single principle under emotional fitness reinforced. It's like a lot of people are like, I'm good at this one. I've got these 5. I'm doing well here, but these 5, not as much. Here's where I'm struggling. And we have to meet each person where they are.
Yeah.
Not every person is the same. The good thing is, like in medicine, we're similar enough, in medicine, we all have a heart generally located, in our chest right here, right? Most of us have a couple of kidneys. Most of us have a liver, things like that, where doctors can go, okay, anatomically, got it. Physiologically, similar, but there's a reason there's 10 different pain relievers out there. Not everything works the same for everyone, and doctors can't come up with the exact same thing for everyone. It doesn't work that way. Well, it's the same here. If someone comes to me, we do need to meet them where they are. We need to find out where they are. Of the 6 pillars, I think I've only talked about 4 or 5 of them, but where are they already strong? Great. I exercise like a fiend 5 days a week. Great. Don't need to talk about that. What about nutrition? I'm doing this and then this. Here's my beliefs here. All right, correct a few things there, maybe not. Move over here. What's going on in emotional fitness? So we can start evaluating emotional fitness. We can start evaluating their why. We can start evaluating whether they have triggers related to compulsive eating and compulsive behaviors.
That's a biggie too, don't you find that? I mean, I know that most people, I know I do this too, if you're having a bad day, if you're having a bad week, it's one of the main things that we like to, I don't know. It's all about, I mean, we even have categories of food for it, right? Comfort food. It's like, it's a way for us to, we think we're regulating our emotions by like putting food inside of ourselves to help with those feelings. But I mean, it's so connected. And I want to bring this up too in relation to processed foods, because I know, again, particularly when I am having a stress, the last thing I want is an apple. Like I want a bag of chips.
Yeah.
I mean, it is something, it's a default that I tend to lean on, and it doesn't, I don't feel authentically good after, the experience.
Right.
But I mean, I'm sure that a lot of people are doing this, and I know that you've had a lot of knowledge of the evidence out there regarding what these ultra processed foods can do in connection to depression, anxiety. Can you speak to that a little bit too?
Yes, thank you for that. It's so, so important.
Mm.
And again, something that's barely discussed.
Mm-hmm.
Hardly the general public knows almost nothing about, and I don't blame them. I blame the institutions that are supposed to get the messages out, that have a huge base. I mean, a huge, we'll say, following, or a huge ability to get it out with this massive pulpit where they could get better information out about this, and they're not.
Right.
So I definitely want to make sure it's clear that for any of this, I don't blame any listener. I don't blame the kind of end consumer. It's the institutions, it's the messaging that has failed us for 60, 70 years now. Right. So it's really important to know unequivocally. And there's few things that I will say that it's unequivocal, meaning there's no equivocation. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Ultra processed food is terrible for mental health. Terrible for emotional fitness. And I don't like the word terrible very often, because it's a catastrophic.
Yeah.
Right? It's like a lot of times we use catastrophics. I had a terrible day. What happened? One of my tires on my car was a little low. That's not really a terrible day, probably. Right. I mean, I'm not saying it couldn't turn into it if something really terrible happened, but we have a tendency to kind of use the words that are more catastrophic when they don't apply. In this case, it applies. There's research coming out daily, weekly at a minimum, looking at ultra processed foods' impact on mental health, depression, anxiety, mood, mental energy, focus, concentration, you name it. Not one study in the past 15 years, and I look at the research every week, not one study has come out in 15 years that said that people who consume the most ultra-processed food do the best.
Right.
They all do the worst. Mm-hmm. And when we look at this massive, we'll say, mental health crisis going on in the United States, a big part of it, in my opinion, but I'm going to say unequivocally, is related to the massive increase of consumption of ultra-processed food with these known negative mental health effects. Yeah. What happens is, so often, the medical community doesn't consider it. Mm-hmm. Person comes in, whether it's a psychologist, psychiatrist, or just your primary care, whatever it may be, they aren't asking, how much ultra-processed food are you consuming?
Right.
It's, what are you feeling? What's going on? What's this? What's been going on perhaps with life challenges? And that's all important too, obviously. But unless we are looking at ultra processed food as a major contributor of mental health disease, we are medicating without addressing the root cause.
Exactly.
And we are handicapping as individuals if we don't learn what we need to learn about ultra-processed food, if we don't minimize it to a great degree, then we are handicapping the medical professionals that are trying to treat us. Mm-hmm. Because chemicals, neurotransmitters, our gut health, everything that, our second brain, as our gut is called, it all is impacted positively or negatively by, what we eat.
Yeah.
I have personal experience, Jen. I mean, there were many years ago now when I ate ultra processed food. But if you remember back in the 90s, it was about low fat. Let's go low fat. We got to go low fat, right? And then you go like Snackwell's cookies and baked lays and that kind of stuff. It was low fat. Well, I didn't have that all the time, but I had it frequently enough. And what I didn't even know about myself is how sensitive I was. I'm an N of one, as we'd say in research. I'm just one person, but I'm just an example of the millions who have very similar responses and don't know it. I didn't know, but I had experienced a period of depression. I had no explicable reason for it.
Right.
Married, good. Kids, good. Home, good. All my needs are met, good. Financial, good. Why? Why are you blue? You know, maybe not clinically depressed, but definitely low. Why? And finally, through through a number of events, I went, I know of research that says that if you eliminate this stuff, that it can improve. But me? I mean, I really was. I was like, but me? And I thought, I've never been sensitive to, but I was. And when I cleaned it out, the clouds parted.
Wow.
I looked up, there was a blue sky, and I went, oh, come on. I probably just had a good week. I didn't want to attribute it to this stuff. Even me, I was like, oh, come on. Then I went back to, let's just for the sake of argument, let's just say I went back to baked lays and Snackwells here and there or whatever, the stuff that, and then here I come. Eeyore.
Wow.
I'm old enough where Winnie the Pooh, Eeyore, is always a black cloud hanging over my head. That was me. And I went, oh, come on. Seriously, that within a week? All right, let's clean it out again. And then within 4 or 5 days, clouds part, feel better mood, better energy. Jen, I did this 6 times because I was like, it can't be. It just can't be. And it was.
Wow.
And it's not just Dave, it's the millions of us that are far more susceptible to these industrial additives and ultra processed food that are messing us up. And I can't tell you how much better I feel now, 15 years after I figured this out, compared to, I'm 58, I was 43.
Wow.
I'm mentally way sharper, clearer thinking, better mood on a daily basis. Compared to that period when it really first started to, I'll say, really noticeably and negatively impact me. So, and it's crucial. It really is that people, and what I would say, I would challenge people is, I don't want to overwhelm and say, get to 90% real food as fast as you can. If you have it in you, great, do it. I mean, but even if you can just eat one more thing, and one less thing. You can just swap out one thing that's real food compared to ultra processed food. Those little changes can make a difference.
That's amazing. I got to tell you, that is truly amazing. And personally, again, I've experienced something similar because I started having to eat more whole food items because I have candida, which is an overgrowth of yeast, and it's really highly affected by processed foods. So, whenever, and it still comes and goes, because I tend to go back and forth. And I'm sure you've experienced this with many people, right? We just we go good for a while and then it's like, we start to fall off the wagon, whatever. And then, we rely on old past habits. But the thing is, it's true. The way the industry is, the food industry, it's so highly designed. Everything is packaging. Everything is, messaging. So all this stuff is related to processed, food items that it's like you just can't help but be bombarded with it. I think more now more than ever before because of things like social media. I mean, you're just scrolling on your social media and you see one thing after another. They target you. So I really do appreciate the fact that you have come across this and you've had your own experience with this, because it really is, I think, crucial. If people were aware of these principles and, putting this forward more, I think that a lot more people would be helped. And because I do believe, I love how you just break it down to, we really have that it's like the memes of yesterday in our head, like you said, like less calories and then more exercise. It seems so simple and easy, but there's all these other contributing factors
Yes.
that actually are within our grasp. And, if once you allow people to understand this, there's so much more opportunity for success. I think it's great. One of the other things that you bring up is that interpersonal relationships, how that's also important. And I think that, so many of us, we categorize, we're highly categorical, where we, put things in order. Like, okay, well, this is our nutrition and this is our exercise. But like when you talk about interpersonal relationships also, and how does that like fit into the balance of everything? I mean, clearly it does, but what's your take on that?
I would say it mostly falls into the under the category of social connection. And I still shake my head even currently, because we none of us have really figured out the impact of social media, the full impact of it. It's still too new for us.
Right.
Government hasn't figured out what to do with it. The social media platforms don't really know exactly what to do. We as consumers haven't figured it out. It's happened so fast and it's coming at us in such a blitzkrieg kind of way that we just haven't had time to process it. This is very abnormal for we as a human species to have, this quote ability to connect, but to feel so disconnected. And, we're seeing in the United States, I can't speak for other countries, but we're seeing in the United States increased depression, increased loneliness, increased depression in teenagers, increased loneliness in teenagers who have their phones in front of their face, 18 hours a day or whatever. Right. And they feel less connected. They feel more lonely. And so social connection is evolutionary, biological. We need it. And we use it for all kinds of things, obviously, to kind of see what are others doing, being able to rely on others. We all need each other. I do what I do. I'm a health coach, but I certainly need an electrician to come fix my electricity, a plumber for this. I need my car person. I need a doctor. I need all kinds of people to do all kinds of things, in my world. So when people are trying to do good, we need everyone's contribution because we all have our thing. So there's that with regard to social connection. But the research is really clear, too, that when we look at people who have the highest levels of life satisfaction and happiness and who live the longest with life satisfaction, it's going to be people that far more often than not have good social connections. Friends, doesn't have to be a ton, but the ones they have are strong. Right. Family, whatever it may be, groups. And so, a social connection I look at as a part of emotional fitness, because our emotional fitness, we are more likely to feel like we have more reserve, more ability to respond better, to be in that, as I said, feeling authentically good more often. We're going to feel authentically good more often if we have the social connection amount and type we need.
Right.
And that's very individual too. You got extroverts, you got introverts, you've got people in between, you've got whatever it is. We don't all need the same type and amount, but we all need what we need. And despite kind of some prevalence out there that I just want to avoid people. There's some, kind of because of we see what's on social, and some of it's so toxic.
Yeah.
And some of it, and just kind of what's going on, everything from a political deal to a this deal to a social deal, whatever it may be, there can be a feeling of, get me away from people because people are whatever. I don't feel that way, but I'm generally introverted. So I'm just wired that way. So my connections are that I have incredible friends and family, and I feel like I have exactly what I need. Not everybody does. I'm very grateful. I know that in many ways I'm lucky, and it just is what it is for me. But it isn't the same for everyone. but we all need some.
Yeah.
And
right.
so that social connection is a huge part, those interpersonal relationships. And I'm going to say at least some interpersonal relationships offline.
Yes.
Some, you know, where it's not just in the digital space.
Right.
I've created, you know, probably like you or anyone. I mean, I've created some really long-term, amazing friendships because of the internet. I really have. There are people I met that I'm friends with, that I have communication with on a frequent basis, that I never would have met in a million years had the internet not come.
Yeah, right.
But we are in that, we're in kind of an odd space where it's very obvious we don't have this figured out.
Yeah.
But I can't say strongly enough that in some way, shape, or form, being involved in a group, figuring out where your people are, you know, figuring out where the people who are like you, and there are people like you, whatever it may be, whatever you're interested in, having some of that is going to be key at the level you need. I want to respect that, because so often it can be like, as a joke, I'll say, if you watch any HGTV, you know, everybody on there wants to entertain. I want a big house with a massive dining room. It needs to seat at least 16. Because, you know, every day or every week we have cookouts and barbecues and family, and 25 people at our house every weekend. And if you're someone like me, I'm like, wow.
It's not you.
That is not me. You know, good for you. I'm happy. But it just seems like that's who gets portrayed. And you can have, if you're not careful, you can have this, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing wrong with you. We don't want to isolate. We don't want to get to the point where we aren't having some interaction. We aren't having that deep, good personal connection with at least one person, 2 people, 3 people, whatever it may be for you. But we all need some.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, it's so interesting, the era that we're living in. It's true. This used to be just, you know, I'm in my 50s too. So like, you know, this used to be part of what we knew to be part of life. There was no digital space.
Right.
So this was part of what you needed to figure out in life. Where was your people? You know, where was your community? Where was your niche? Where would you fit in? And, you know, I agree. I feel so thankful for the digital space, because it's allowed me to do things that I could never have done before, you know. But I feel during COVID, we all experienced this, you know, we were so locked into the digital space that we were just like, everyone was, you know, really struggling. It is so still important. And I think that, you know, I teach, so I see the kids, you know, addicted to their phones. They're all sitting in the cafeteria with all their friends looking at their phones. And I'm thinking, put it down, look at each other. You know, this is part of the human condition that, you know, we thrive when we have that. So, you know, it's great to acknowledge that. I think that's super, super important. One of the things that you also mentioned is the importance of self-talk. Now, that's a big thing that's discussed in the areas of mental health in general.
Yes.
How do you see this as being something that we can, you know, utilize to help us move forward and empower our goals in that way?
Super important, critical subject, huge part of emotional fitness, no doubt. Even if we don't say it out loud, we talk to ourselves more than anyone else on any day, every single day. There's no one we talk to more than ourselves. It might just be all up here in the brain. Most times it is. Most times it's not vocalized. But it's true. And I think it was estimated, I might be off on this, but I think the last estimate I saw is we have like 60,000 thoughts in a day. Most of them are repeated. And so if that's the case, it's really important that we be careful what it is that we're saying when we're talking to ourselves. A lot of times, people are incredibly hard on themselves. And a part of that is perhaps a belief that maybe in an area that, first of all, it could be upbringing, there could be trauma in the past, there could be all kinds of things in the past, depending on what parents, guardians, role models, whatnot, did to them. And I have to acknowledge that in a very serious way. And my heart always just aches when I hear the stories from my clients of what was done and said to them in their upbringing. Because I've got 3 grown kids now.
Right.
Youngest is 29. I just can't imagine ever, saying whatever to them that has happened. So, I have to, we have to acknowledge that. We have to, as very best we can, continue to grow and realize in our adulthood that it's self-compassion that is going to get us the wins, not verbal beatdowns internally, where it's like, if I was maybe I just need to be harder on myself. You piece of crap, whatever we say to ourselves that's so harsh because we made a mistake, because we didn't follow through on something, because of whatever. And this belief is, my problem is I'm too soft. I need to be harder on myself. But the research, and I always say there's research, there's evidence, and then there's experiential. Experiential is like, I've been doing this for 30 years, 24 years online, lots of experience. And to really help clients win, there's a balance in art. Combine the evidence with experience, because evidence, research, published studies don't clearly lay out everything we need to know about the human condition. They just don't. Right. It's just, we're just too complex.
Yeah.
And we're just dealing with moving targets. That's what humans are. So, but a match is where the research is very clear. Being more self-compassionate, treating yourself like a good friend would. A good friend doesn't necessarily let you off the hook entirely. Hey, Dave, come on now. You've got more in you than that. Your response could have been better than that. But your friend doesn't necessarily, or not, if it's a good friend, your friend isn't also going to call you every name in the book, and tell you you're a POS, and tell you, all these things, and just to give you a beat down in hopes that you're somehow going to come out of it better for it. That's not what our best friends do. They stand by us. They support us. They acknowledge that it's okay. We're human. We made a mistake. We can recover from this. We can do better going forward. There's maybe something to learn from this. And then once we've learned what we can, forgive yourself and move forward.
Right.
Eyes front, because that's the direction we want to go. That living your life looking in the rearview mirror is not a good place to be.
No.
So we want our eyes to the front and be more self-compassionate. Be kinder to yourself. Another thing I'll say too, as far as self-talk goes, reduce the catastrophics. Awful, horrible, terrible nightmare.
Right.
Because 99% of the time, maybe 99.5, they're inaccurate.
Yeah.
And what happens if we use catastrophics like that is our emotional state goes way up. And I don't mean like in a positive way. I mean, we're ramped up, right? We get in this fight, flight, or freeze mode where, our sympathetic nervous system is like, let's go, okay. And we get so riled up. And then it's like, well, now I need some relief, right? Now I need something that's going to help me feel better because I'm so riled up. What would that be? Well, then we get into that conditioned automated response again. And you were talking about how if you turn to something in the moment where you feel better in the moment because you're like, life's delivered this blow right now. And I feel like if I had this, I bet you do feel better in the moment. Like you said, it's more of that regretful good. You feel you regret it later, but it's also a conditioned automated response. And the thing is that as humans, we will only repeat things where there's a payoff. Now that payoff can be really short and the pain will be really long. But still, if there's a payoff and we're not aware that there's that short payoff, long-term pain, and we don't have the why in place, and we're not shoring up emotional fitness a little bit, and we're not, kind of maybe as necessary working with someone that can help us see these things and can help us realize, oh, this is what's going on. You're not broken, defective, or a mess of a human being. You're not. But this was a little weaker than it needed to be. this needs to be a little stronger over here. Let's reduce the catastrophics a little bit. And these are, of course, 1/10 of 1% of kind of how you might come at someone, but these are all important things and how we might help someone in the moment to just get a little better next time.
Yeah.
Because we're all human. We're all flawed. We all fall down. We all fail, but I think it was John Maxwell who kind of coined the phrase fail forward. And, fail forward is more about just looking at it from, first of all, recognizing that we all do. And here's the thing, the people that are trying the most adventurous, high-level things are going to fail the most. The people who are trying things that are the hard things, the things that are new, the things that are difficult, the things that could make a better difference in the world or whatever, those people fail the most.
Right.
But I'm going to say this, I don't think they fail the hardest. They fail the most. There's going to be lots of failures, and they have to say, okay, what can I learn from that? How can I be self-compassionate, be a good friend to myself, be real, but see the situation for what it is, but don't make it worse than it is. Go forward, let's get better, and let's do it again. Ultimately, that's, as just in the flawed human experience that we are, the beautiful, amazing, flawed human experience that we're all living, that is probably the best that we can be, the best we can do.
Right.
If we're not failing, we're probably not really trying anything.
Yeah. You're not living, right? I mean,
not.
You have to take a chance somewhere.
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's so great because I love how your approach just all around health with this balance of all of these things. Because when I'm speaking to you, I like I said, I categorize things I'm like, okay, that my food, this is what I do with my food, and this is what I do with my exercise, or this is what I do with my mental health. But when you really remember that this is all about balancing all these aspects of ourselves, it becomes much more holistic. And also, I just love this because it shows how, engaged you can be with, being part of this. It's almost like you can collaborate with all these aspects of potentialities, like we really do have more influence over these aspects of our lives. I just feel like so many people give up, and they're just like, oh, well, this is my illness, or this is just, my situation. Or I just see that there's, when you look at things differently, it really puts the power back in the hands of the individual. And I love this approach. Let's get to exercise and mental health, just because we know how important it really is. But we also know that so many people have a busy lifestyle. Okay. And it's squeezing in exercise. It's like the first thing that goes out of our lives. So I know everyone, and it's really important to understand that we're all different, right? I mean, you said that. So, we all have different needs, but what is part of the essential that we should try to incorporate in our lives? I mean, I need to know this too, because it's like, I have a busy day, so I'm not sedentary. I'm always running around, in my job. So I feel like I get exercise at my job, but I also feel beat up a little bit, like I need the stretching. I need, other means of movement. What is something, especially for people who are a little older, what are the things that we should be incorporating somehow and integrating into our lives?
Sure. Great. It's a great question. Well, one of the things that I stress is, for most people, the fundamentals eventually executed exceptionally are going to get you anything you want. It's not going to be anything crazy, extreme, weird. You got to stand on one leg, juggle 3 oranges, and sing a German folk song. Nothing crazy. You're like, what? I got to do what? What do you want me to do? I think I stole that from the movie The Jerk with Steve Martin.
Oh, really? That's funny.
Yeah. But I think that was I think in that movie, I always think of that because I'm always like, what's a crazy thing you want somebody to try to do? And I think that was ended up being a DUI test in that movie or something. It was funny. But anyway, but fundamentals, the fundamentals executed. Matter of fact, I came up with a word that doesn't even exist. And with my students, they'll hear me say, we want to be fundeceptional. Fundamentals executed exceptionally. It's going to get us almost everything we want. So when it comes to exercise, what are the fundamentals? A fundamental of exercise for health span, lifespan, just general health and fitness is when we're in maintenance, weight maintenance is what I'm talking about here. Then we're looking at 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per week. 150 minutes. That's, if you break it down, it's 30 minutes, 5 days a week, or it could be 50 minutes, 3 days a week, but probably going to be better if it's spread out a little bit more. You know, we want to be exercising most days of the week. How many is that? Well, at least 4. If we're at least 4, we've exercised most days of the week. That's different than incidental movement.
Right.
I walk to and fro, and this and that. Don't get me wrong. Walking is fantastic. But if we're looking at it to be considered exercise and in improving our fitness and health span, lifespan, then it needs to be done at a more of a moderate intensity, whereas kind of walking for work would be low intensity. All right. So good, definitely better than not. So 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity, where included in that 150 minutes is at least 2 days of strength training. Yep. Now, it can be on the same day as as a cardio piece. Let's just say you're real simple that it was going to be a moderate intensity walk, which, by the way, a moderate intensity walk is considered to be about 3 to 4 miles per hour. Okay. So it's not crazy fast, but it's not just a slow, you know. And I get it. If anybody's listening, like, well, I've got a kind of a bad hip, or I've got a bad knee, or I've got this, or I've got that, then please, low impact, do what you can do, swim, anything's great. But if we're just talking about, let's just say people that are just basically good to go for walking, then 3 to 4 miles per hour would be a moderate intensity walk pace. So you're not walking 3 to 4 miles per hour consistently when at work.
Right.
That's not what we're doing.
Right.
So we're looking to, again, it's the 150 minutes, not just of incidental movement, 150 minutes of purposeful exercise at a moderate intensity pace. So on some given day, let's say that you did your 3 to 4 mile an hour walk, and it was going to be your strength training day. You can add strength training on that day. Okay. And it doesn't need to be anything crazy. It can be just body weight. It can.
Yeah.
So, one example is you could, I kid you not, every 2 minutes. So here's how it would work. You can do 5 on your knees or against the wall push-ups. 5. Okay. You can do 5 crunches or sit-ups, whatever your back can take, whatever's going on, whatever you're used to, some core, type of thing. And 5 air squats. That means that's just a body weight squat. And you can squat to a chair. You can squat to something where you can feel like, all right, I get a little sense of how deep I'm going here. And I don't really maybe you don't have the mobility to get we call your hip crease at your knee height. That's getting your butt down there. Maybe you can't do that. It's okay. You do what you can do. But you can do 5, some kind of push-up. And we always say all of these things are modifiable. We call it scaling. You can scale these things to whatever will work for you. Because you can't do an on your toes, full plank, perfect up and down push-up doesn't mean that you can't do it.
Right.
You can do some version. All right. Some kind of sit up, some kind of crunch. So we've worked, we've got chest, shoulder, tricep. We've got some core, and we've got with that lower body exercise, the squat, we're working everything almost. All right. Definitely all the lower body. But 5 push-ups, 5 sit-ups, crunches, 5 squats, and then rest until the top of 2 minutes. So, and do that for 5 rounds. That's 10 minutes.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
It's like, where can I start? Well, is 10 minutes going to do anything? If you haven't been doing anything, right, and you're deconditioned, that's going to be a great place to start.
Yeah.
And there's no rush, because if you're doing 5 push-ups and you shake it out and then you get in position, you do your 5 crunches or sit-ups or whatever, then you shake that out and you stand up and you get in position, you do 5 squats. That all in might take you a minute 15.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're resting to the top of the 2-minute mark. So it's like this. The clock starts at 0. All right. And you're going to do the 5, 5, 5.
Mm-hmm.
And only when the clock says 2 minutes, you go again.
I love this.
That's how it works. And then you'll do your 5, 5, 5 again. And then when the clock says 4 minutes, you'll go again.
Right.
So you're resting the remainder of the time. We in our field, we just abbreviate it like an E2 mom. Every 2 minutes on the minute. Okay. E2 mom. Every 2 minutes on the minute.
I love it.
And so you would start at 0. That's a round. And then at 2 minutes, that's a round. And then at 4 minutes, that's a round. And then 6, and then 8, right? 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. So that you're done inside of 10 minutes.
Wow.
And a lot of people think, oh my God, if I'm not in the gym an hour and joined a gym membership, and if I'm not doing Orange Theory and CrossFit and this 45-minute YouTube video, then I'm not doing anything. It's worthless. Not true, not true, not true, not true. It depends on where you're at. If you're a highly conditioned person listening to this, you're going to roll your eyes and go, yep, that's for a beginner. It's not for me. I get it. So you do what you can do. You're probably already doing everything anyway, because if you rolled your eyes at what I just said, you're probably already into it. You do you.
Right.
But for the person who isn't doing anything, the person who's trying to figure out where to start, it's a great place. You need no equipment.
Yeah.
And
so there's really no excuse, because you break it down to these areas of conditioning and you could get a little rest in. I mean, it's really about, the reason why I asked this question is because, it's very hard, like I said, for some people to start. And starting is everything, because you have to build the practice, right? You have to build the habit. So if you can't build a habit, because it's so overwhelming to start, because you're like, oh, I can't do all that. I can't fit, 45 minutes into the, it makes it so simple, because I'm envisioning it and I'm like, yes, all those areas are worked, but of course, like, why can't we all, try to find an time in our lives? And I'm certainly going to now, because now I have a framework that I could go to in my mind. I love that E2 mom.
E2 mom. Yeah.
Yeah. Because, and then if I could grasp that, and then it's like, oh, okay, let me just go to that. I love it. It's, because I know so many people who would benefit from more exercise, and I'm being one of them. And I understand how people today, they're so busy. I mean, I'm not saying like it never existed, but I almost feel like the way the world is moving so fast, more and more are required of us. In the past, like we talked about social media, it's like today, if you have any kind of entrepreneurial platform, you need to be on social media to always be right. So now it's not just your job. It's not just your, side gig. It's also like, oh, I got to make sure I'm, advertising on social media. So it's just feeling like, where can we fit this in? But I love this kind of thing, because once a person gets good at that, then they want to naturally do more. And it's a way to build in steps, and gain momentum. And people need to feel that they can gain momentum so that they can keep at it. It's such a great thing. Nutrition, we talked about the ultra processed foods. And you had mentioned before that, this questioning of ourselves, this self-awareness, I guess, of, where is the hunger originating from?
Yeah.
Is it in our heads? Is it below the neck, right? In the stomach?
Right.
Are we really hungry? So I again, it's such a common thing to reach for something just for, getting a quick satisfaction, but long term, how do we settle into more of a framework of self-awareness of how we're eating and where that hunger is coming from?
It's important that in our modern society, our incredibly obesogenic society, that we understand. Look, right now, for 2023, 43% of adults in the U.S. are obese, not just overweight, obese. More than 70% are overweight, and it's predicted that by 2030, 50% of Americans, adults, are going to be obese.
Wow.
So the battle's being lost. And I don't, again, fault the individuals. We are humans responding to this environment. That's what we are.
Right.
A strong counter, the solution, if you will, is education with implementable strategies in this real world we're living in. What education? I'm already educated. I hear it all the time. Eat less, exercise more, eat a vegetable, do this. I got it. You don't got it if you're not winning.
Right.
If you're maintaining, the weight you want, if you're maintaining the health and fitness you want, then maybe you do have it. And I don't want to say everybody listening to this, nobody has it. Sure, there are going to be people listening that have got it. But for the overwhelming majority of everyone else, which that's what it is where we are, the messaging, again, you heard me say earlier, the messaging from the most influential sources, the messaging from the sources that have the largest audience has failed us. And so hearing more of a message from the select few that are going to be, I'd say, preaching the message more like what I am, where we're looking at all of these factors that are going into our obesogenic environment as a part of this much more comprehensive message, where we're looking at nutrition, exercise, emotional fitness, why power, addiction, and then engaging support as needed. And so I want to bring in that sixth pillar, engaging personal, professional, spiritual support as needed. It's not about being, I'm a humble agnostic. So I'm not saying someone has to have a higher power or God. And if you do, great, please, embrace that if you have that, because it can really help you. If you are, whoever you are, if you are more in sync with your core spiritual values, you're going to do better. So rely on it, lean on it, do it. Personal support is more like that friend or a group or whatever, where they aren't experts, but they can help. You can be an accountability partner. And then there are professional resources where it could be somebody like me, a psychologist, a personal trainer, a whoever that is trained, a professional, and has a different ear to hear what is being said, what's being conveyed, so that we can reflect in an empathetic way some things that what's been swirling around in the old noggin didn't have a place to land. And when it was swirling, sometimes so many things, when it's swirling around in our own head and we don't give it a professional place to land, it can just be reinforced, and it was wrong.
Yeah.
Thoughts were reinforced. It's
True.
like, yeah, you tell a friend and the friend doesn't know, and the friend goes, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely wrong. But with a professional reflection, it can cause us to rethink, maybe reframe, and come at it from a different mindset, a different view. So you were saying, like, long term, it's kind of my answer. Long term, what do we do? How do we maintain and increase consciousness all along the way? The reality is this. I'll just come at it from an obesity language, because again, I work mostly with people who are someplace heavier than they want to be. They want to get someplace lighter and healthier and more fit than they are. Obesity is a chronic relapsing condition. Again, it's one of those areas where the evidence in my real world see that absolutely being true.
Yeah.
My goal is always to prevent the relapsing part. The chronic is going to be there. And I don't mean like someone's going to be chronically obese. I mean like the environment we're living in. Jen, in my lifetime, the environment that we're in isn't going to improve enough for us to rely on the environment to change.
Right.
We're going to have to learn, adapt, grow, apply, and know, and hear messaging, at least, like mine. I mean, it has to be Dave Greenwalt's, but it's going to be like mine in that it's comprehensively looking at all of these factors for us to win this. We won't win it from a top-down approach. We won't win it if we wait for government. We won't win it if we wait for big food. We won't win it if we wait for whatever the entities are that have the massive platform, where I call it the monkey banana relationship. We're all just monkeys, and we all respond to the various bananas in our lives, positively or whatever it may be. Well, the political monkeys and the big food monkeys, they respond huge to money, 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 money. I do not see that changing in our lifetime, Jen.
Right.
So, but I'm also not someone that goes, well, I guess it's futile. Not at all. Because
Right.
at the individual level, we can solve this for ourselves.
Right.
Societally, I would bet all of my future earnings and savings and long-term investments that by 2030 we'll be closer to 50% obese than we are 43% right now. Even so, at the individual level, I'm super hopeful because as individuals hear this and they go, well, this doesn't sound exactly like what I've heard before.
Right.
It doesn't sound like, the American Academy of Dietetics is all things in moderation. Well, all things in moderation, including moderation. Sometimes 0 is better than 1.
Yeah.
Sometimes, because of addiction, 0 is better than 1. Sometimes this ultra-processed food, big food, which is contributing to the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics with this huge audience, sometimes we have to recognize these relationships. And I don't look at necessarily the politicians making the laws, the FDA, Department of Health and Human Services, big food, American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, is all of these evil, awful people. These are people living lives, trying to raise a family,
right,
doing their thing. A lot of them are just they're trying to do good work. However, we need to keep in mind the monkey banana relationship. And if we follow the money, we're a lot of times going to find answers to decisions that seem really weird. Like, why would they do that? And then we go, oh, the money. That's right. Okay.
Right.
And if we follow the money, then we can find that. So I look at it not from this is all evil. It's more like I need to understand the relationship. And when I understand the relationship, I can at the individual level go, I'm not going to buy into that. I'm sorry. Right. You guys have to make money. You guys want us to eat, potato chips because I bet you can't eat just one. And you're right. We can't. But that doesn't mean that I have to live that way, and then I have to buy into that lifestyle. So at the individual level, we can become educated for real. What is driving us to overconsume ultra processed food? Once we understand what, and we understand the forces, and we understand those relationships, we can make the decision, if we choose, to not buy in to that massively, powerfully, economically influenced machine that continues to drive us to ultra processed food. We can make other choices. And when we do that, and when we raise our intake of real food and displace ultra processed food, because Jen, that's what's happened in the last 50, 60 years. Real food has become displaced right, by ultra processed food. So all we're looking to do, which I say all as though it's easy. I don't mean it's easy, but what we're looking to do is reverse that as much as we can, at least starting like the 10-minute strength workout, have one more real food item in a day compared to an ultra processed food item. It's the habit in the beginning that's more important than the intensity. Perfection is never required. I still have ultra processed food to some small degree, every day, but it's very small. Right. And I didn't used to be that way. Jen, I hated vegetables. I didn't even like, my wife, we'd go to a restaurant and she'd go to the salad bar and load up with vegetables. And I chuckled. I knew it was healthy, so I didn't mean it in this serious way, but I said, why are you ruining that perfectly good salad with vegetables? And that's me. I was meat and potatoes, right. I was like, whatever, and when in my powerlifting days, I was 230 pounds and it was a pound bag of M&Ms as a pre-workout meal. So,
wow, that's funny.
Oh yeah. So, it's not like I come from, it's just, I've always eaten this way. No, I haven't.
Yeah.
But
right.
The more I've learned, the more I see the relationship that I'm talking about here at the top down level. And the more I've seen how truly bad ultra processed food is, not only for us physically, but also for our mind from an addictive perspective, I just want to do less and less and less of it. And I'm there. And that's where I help my clients get to a point that is good and right for them.
Right.
I'm not looking for my clients to all become Dave Greenwalt here. It's not, and it's not required.
Right.
But we don't want it to be 95% ultra processed food.
Yeah. Right. I mean, you know, what you do is so great because you really bring it into an understanding that's much more like I said, it's much more integrated, you know, it's much more balanced. It's really all these concepts, you know, if we can hold them in our minds at the same time as we make these daily choices, it's amazing what changes can take place. And I love how you you know, you have so much experience, 30 years of experience doing this. You've had your own body and mind having experiences that you can also pull from. It's a real pleasure to, you know, engage with someone like you because I love talking about this stuff. I really do. But you're so like, I might talk about it with someone who's just good with nutrition or just good with exercise. You really have a great balance in all these areas and such expertise. Where could people find you and your programs that you offer? If you could tell them your website and anything that you are offering right now that they could look into.
You bet. You know, I'll keep it really simple. Any links to my social, and I'm everywhere: TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, where else? I mean, all of those places. But the easiest way is just go to lluniversity.com. And that stands, it's just shortened Leanness Lifestyle University. Instead of it's 2 N's, 2 S's. Yeah. Instead of having to spell all that out, it's just lluniversity.com. And in one way, shape, form, or another, and if you don't see it by chance, because as a business, Jenna, I'm not telling you anything you don't know for sure, and anybody that's in the business, they know this too. We're always evolving. We're always changing. Like, I don't mean like, not only am I evolving as a coach and always going to put out the most current, latest information to help people sift and sort and get through this crazy world, but also in our business and our marketing and the things that we're doing, we're always looking at how can I, stay authentic, be true, be honest, but still be the most attractive. So if you don't see it on our site where there's a 7-day free trial, if you don't see that when you come to lluniversity.com, then please email me and say you heard me on Jen's show, and I will make sure you get a 7-day free trial. And it is truly free. There's no credit card. What do they call it? A credit card gateway or whatever it's called, where you got to enter a card and then all of a sudden,
right.
There's no card. There's no anything. I just kind of feel, and I've been doing this for quite a while, but I feel like I can explain it to the high heavens, to someone, say, here's what our program is. Here's how it works. Here's how we come at it. But I find that if people can just come in and just see it, experience it, and test see the interaction, test it out for themselves, it's a better way to go, because then you get it.
That's a great offer. I have a few people who I think might be interested in it as well. So I think this is great. David, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. I'm so thrilled that we got together and to do this. Thank you so much for your time and for your wisdom. It's really been a really informative chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I just want to leave your listeners with this. No matter what anybody has said, no matter what your past experience may have been, no matter what your upbringing may be, no matter what anyone around you may be saying about you getting in the shape you want to be in, whatever that may be, don't let anyone dissuade you. You absolutely can do this. There's nothing wrong with you. And when you put these things into place in the way that they need to be for you, I'm so hopeful. I really am. I'm so hopeful. And because I know the impact it can have, and you really can live with the fitness and in the body you want and desire. Please don't let anyone dissuade you. You absolutely can do this. That's great advice. And I hear the coach voice in you. It is. I just can't help it. It's great. I really am. I would say I'm more passionate now than I was in 1999 when I was, 34. you
Yeah.
know?
Well, you have so many years of experience behind you now. And you know you're absolutely right in what you know for sure, you know?
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful thing. Thank you, David.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Not As Crazy As You Think, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And remember, mental health is attainable for anyone, especially those labeled with mental illness. Until next time, peace out.